Harry first met Jane in a coffee shop near Pike Place Market in Seattle, where she laughed at him for mispronouncing macchiato like it was a medication. Instead of getting offended, he bowed dramatically, claimed he was a small-town beverage scholar, and made her laugh so hard she snorted into her sleeve. That was how they began. One joke, two strangers, and a rainy city that made everything feel like a movie. Jane had bright eyes, quick wit, and the kind of smile that made Harry forget his usual caution. He thought she was charming. He had no idea she was also studying him. Their first year together felt like a highlight reel made by fate itself. They wandered Capitol Hill at midnight, split greasy fries from food trucks, and argued playfully over whether bad karaoke was an art form or a public safety issue. Jane once dragged Harry onto a tiny stage in Portland and forced him to sing Sweet Caroline to a room of indifferent strangers. By the chorus, the whole bar was singing with him, and Jane was recording him while laughing so hard she nearly dropped her phone. Harry loved how alive she made ordinary moments feel. He mistook excitement for sincerity and performance for love. When they married in Denver, the ceremony was small, sunny, and almost painfully sweet. Jane walked down the aisle in a dress simple enough to look effortless and expensive enough to start an argument with 3 credit cards. Harry cried first, then laughed at himself, then cried again when Jane whispered, "Don't ruin the photos, cowboy." Everyone adored them. His mother called Jane a firecracker, and Harry agreed, proud of the phrase because it sounded affectionate instead of dangerous. They honeymooned in Santa Barbara, where Jane stole hotel slippers. Harry got sunburn on 1A, and they promised they would always tell each other the truth. For a while, they really did feel like a team. They moved to Austin, bought a modest but beautiful house with a wide porch and a stubborn front gate, and spent weekends turning it into their dream home. Harry painted the kitchen twice because Jane changed her mind from cream to eggshell, then admitted she could not tell the difference. They laughed over burnt pancakes, danced in socks on hardwood floors, and named the noisy air conditioner Old Frank because it groaned louder than either of them. Harry handled long hours at work. Jane took over household paperwork. It seemed efficient. It was a first mistake. Harry worked in commercial construction management, which meant early mornings, delayed dinners, and a phone that buzzed like it hated peace. Jane said she understood. She said she was proud of him. She said the house they were building together mattered more than nights out. Harry believed her, because belief is easy when someone kisses your forehead and hands you leftovers in a labeled container. But over time, Jane became strangely protective of finances. She insisted she was better with details, made jokes about Harry being too trusting, and took over mortgage files, tax folders, and password with breezy confidence. He thanked her for helping. The funny moments still came, which made the shift harder to spot. Jane once convinced Harry that a neighborhood rooster belonged to a retired magician 2 streets over, and he repeated the story to 3 co-workers before learning she made it up on the spot. Another time, she wrote romance emergency on the calendar, and Harry rushed home thinking something huge awaited him. It was just tacos shaped like hearts and a plastic crown from a party store. "See," she said, "marriage thrives on confusion." He laughed because it was funny. Looking back, he realized he had always enjoyed controlling what other people thought was true. The first crack appeared in Nashville during a friend's birthday trip. Harry came back to the hotel room early with cheesecake slices and found Jane on the balcony whispering into her phone. She smiled when she saw him, but it arrived late, like an actor who missed a cue. When he asked who she was talking to, she answered too quickly. Her cousin, then a friend, then why does it matter? Harry let it go because distrust felt uglier than doubt. Still, that night he lay awake listening to her breathe beside him and wondering why her phone stayed face down from then on. After that, small oddities multiplied like ants finding sugar. Jane started running errands at strange hours. She laughed at texts but turned her screen away. She bought expensive perfume she never wore around Harry and new clothes she claimed were clearance miracles. When he asked whether something was wrong, she kissed his cheek and called him dramatic. One Sunday in Austin, as they hosted a backyard cookout, Harry caught Jane exchanging a look with a sharply dressed man he did not know. It was not romantic enough to prove anything. It was worse. It looked familiar, practiced, and confident, like a secret with routine. Harry confronted her 2 weeks later after finding a hotel receipt in her tote bag from San Antonio, dated on a day she told him she was visiting an aunt in Waco. Jane did not crumble. She did not cry. She leaned against the kitchen counter, folded her arms, and looked bored. Then she admitted there was someone else. Her voice held no shame, only annoyance at being interrupted. Harry felt as if the room had tilted. He asked how long. She gave a shrug sharp enough to wound. "Long enough," she said. "You were married to your job anyway." That sentence hurt more than the confession. He expected guilt to arrive later, maybe after silence had time to work on her. Instead, Jane became crueler. She mocked his stunned expression. She called him predictable, said he was so easy to manage that trusting him had never even been a challenge. When Harry asked whether any part of their marriage had been real, she actually laughed. Not loudly, not wildly, just a neat, contemptuous little laugh that turned his chest cold. "Harry," she said, "love is wonderful, but paperwork is power." He did not fully understand what she meant then. He just knew the woman who once made Tucko hearts now sounded like a stranger. The divorce process began with astonishing speed. Jane already had a lawyer, already had files prepared, already had arguments built around Harry's long absences, supposed instability, and alleged financial carelessness. She painted herself as the organized, burdened spouse who held life together, while Harry drifted through it like a distracted giant with a truck payment. Friends who barely knew the details began acting awkward around him. Some avoided him entirely. Jane was charming when she wanted to be, and now she wanted to be believed. Harry kept expecting truth to matter automatically. It was another mistake. Truth matters most when someone knows how to prove it. The fight centered on the Austen house. Harry had paid the lion's share of the mortgage, property taxes, and repairs, but Jane produced documents suggesting the down payment had come largely from her separate assets. She claimed she had handled refinancing because Harry couldn't keep track of forms. Her lawyer spoke in smooth, expensive sentences that made Harry feel like a man trying to punch fog. At one hearing, Jane glanced back with a smirk so brief it might have gone unnoticed by anyone else. He noticed. It said she was not merely winning. She was enjoying the part where he understood he was losing. Then came the humiliation that turned heartbreak into rage. On the day temporary possession of the home went to Jane, Harry returned to collect essentials while Jane stood in the entryway drinking iced coffee like a queen observing peasants. Her new boyfriend sat on the porch swing, shameless and relaxed, wearing Harry's old college sweatshirt. Jane saw Harry staring and smiled. "He gets cold easily," she said. Harry carried out boxes while she narrated his life like a comedian roasting a volunteer. "Don't forget the toolbox," she added. "You're not exactly handy at keeping things together." Even her boyfriend chuckled. Harry kept walking. He moved into a cramped rental outside Round Rock with beige walls and a refrigerator that hummed like an annoyed bee. The place smelled faintly of old carpet and defeat. For days he existed on Take-8, vending machine coffee, and the kind of exhausted silence that makes clocks sound accusatory. His friend Marcus visited with groceries and jokes, trying to pry him out of bitterness. "This apartment has all the charm of a waiting room," Marcus said, peering at the blank walls. Harry laughed despite himself. That laugh saved something in him. It reminded him he was hurt, not finished. Broken trust was not the end of his story. Harry tried to rebuild quietly. He went back to work, answered questions with half-truths, and stopped checking Jane's social media after seeing staged photos of her laughing on his old porch. She was already turning the house into content, posting captions about peace, fresh starts, and protecting your energy. People praised her courage. Harry felt like screaming. Instead, he boxed up the remains of his marriage and told himself survival counted as progress. One rainy Saturday, he returned to the house for a final pickup approved by attorneys, old tools, family keepsakes, and a file cabinet Jane said held your boring stuff. That file cabinet changed everything. The cabinet sat in the garage beside paint cans and Christmas decorations. Jane was not home. She had left the key under a fake stone and a text saying, "Take your junk and be quick." Harry opened drawers full of utility bills, appliance manuals, and faded envelopes. At first it was exactly what she said, boring stuff. Then he found an old refinancing packet mixed into a folder labeled warranty misc. One page had his supposed initials beside a property transfer addendum. Another had a notarization date. Harry froze. On that date, he had been in Chicago overseeing a project launch, a fact he remembered because he missed his father's birthday dinner. He kept digging with a kind of focused grief had denied him for months. Behind the addendum sat a source of funds worksheet tied to the original down payment. It referenced an account number Harry knew by heart because it belonged to the inheritance his late grandmother left him in Oklahoma. Jane had testified that the down payment was mostly her separate money from before the marriage, but the document suggested the opposite. Harry took photos of everything, including the envelope flap, which held a bank stamp from a branch in Austin dated 3 days after he left for Chicago. Suddenly Jane's phrase echoed back, "Paperwork is power." Harry did not storm into confrontation. He did something Jane never believed he would do. He got disciplined. He called a different attorney, a forensic-minded woman in Dallas named Rebecca Sloan, who spoke like a scalpel. Rebecca reviewed the documents, asked for Harry's travel records, account statements, and old emails, then looked up with sharp interest. "This is not a misunderstanding," she said. "This is either fraud, perjury, or both." Harry felt the first real surge of strength since the divorce began. It was not joy. It was clarity. Jane had not merely betrayed him emotionally. She had built her victory on a lie. Rebecca moved fast. She subpoenaed bank records, phone logs, and notary information. Harry provided flight itineraries, hotel invoices from Chicago, security badge logs from the job site, an archived email chain showing he had repeatedly asked Jane for copies of housing documents she claimed were already handled. The deeper they looked, the uglier it became. Jane had shifted paperwork through an acquaintance in real estate. She had filed altered representations about separate property contributions. Worse, the boyfriend turned out to be connected to a home-flipping consultant who had been advising Jane on how to leverage the house after the divorce. Harry's humiliation was becoming a paper trail. The funny part, in hindsight, was how absurd the lies looked once light hit them. One document claimed Harry had reviewed and approved a transfer on a morning when he was photographed at a Chicago breakfast meeting, wearing a novelty hard hat after losing a bet. Marcus found the photo and laughed so hard he nearly dropped his phone. "This might be the only time a rubber chicken sticker helps win a case," he said, zooming in on Harry's helmet. Even Rebecca smiled. The image was time-stamped, geotagged, and impossible to explain away. Jane had mocked Harry for being simple. She forgot simple people keep honest records. The reopened hearing in Travis County did not feel dramatic at first. Courts rarely do. There were no gasps, no pounding music, no sudden confessions, just binders, quiet voices, and the steady dismantling of a false narrative. Rebecca introduced the travel records, bank histories, notary inconsistencies, and inheritance trace. Then she walked the court through the timing. Step by step, page by page, Jane's story stopped looking polished and started looking manufactured. Harry watched Jane's face lose color for the first time since this nightmare began. Her lawyer objected often, but objections could not repair dates, signatures, or money that came from the wrong account. Jane tried to salvage it with indignation. She claimed confusion, stress, clerical errors, bad memory, but her confidence had cracks now. Under questioning, she contradicted herself on who prepared the transfer documents and when she became aware of the inheritance account. The notary affidavit she relied on looked increasingly compromised. Her boyfriend, subpoenaed and sweating through an expensive suit, admitted he had discussed equity strategy with Jane before the divorce filing. That phrase landed like a hammer. Equity strategy. Not heartbreak, not self-protection, not dignity. Strategy. Harry sat still, hands folded, while the woman who had laughed at him struggled to remember which version of her lie came next. Then the consequences began arriving all at once. The court sanctioned Jane for misrepresentation, froze her ability to refinance or sell the house, and referred aspect of the record for further investigation. Property division was reopened. Her credibility, once her greatest weapon, collapsed in public view. Friends who had quietly chosen sides started sending awkward messages. Sponsors dropped her little home lifestyle page when rumors spread that a Fresh Start content sat on disputed ownership. The boyfriend disappeared within days, apparently discovering that romance built on deceit has poor resale value. Harry took no victory selfie. He just breathed easier, like someone finally allowed to leave underwater. But Harry was not done. Jane had wanted a performance, so the harshest answer was not rage. It was precision. Rebecca filed civil claims tied to financial damages, legal fees, and fraudulent representations affecting marital property. Harry also reported the irregularities to the licensing boards tied to the real estate acquaintance and notarial conduct involved. The investigation widened. People who had helped Jane because they found her charming suddenly found her expensive. Every shortcut she took became a witness against her. This was a non-violent brutality of consequences, not one dramatic blow, but 1,000 doors closing in sequence, each with her own fingerprints on the handle. The house that Jane had used to humiliate Harry became a monument to her unraveling. She could not sell it. She could not borrow against it. Repairs she had delayed now piled up. Insurance questions emerged. Tax filings were examined. A contractor's lien she thought she had dodged resurfaced when attorneys started pulling every thread. The porch swing where her boyfriend once smirked at Harry was removed after a storm cracked its chain. Neighbors gossiped. Delivery drivers whispered. The woman who once curated perfection on social media now lived inside the most awkward conversation on the block. Reputation, Harry learned, burned slower than money but longer. In time, the court awarded Harry a significantly larger property interest, reimbursement connected to the Trace inheritance funds, and a substantial portion of legal costs. Jane was ordered into a settlement structure so punishingly detailed that even Rebecca called it a masterclass in consequences. Harry did not get everything back. Real life rarely offers neat restoration. But he got vindication, leverage, and the thing Jane prized most ripped from her hands: control. She had wanted him to leave feeling small, confused, and powerless. Instead, every official document now told a different story, one in which he gambled on his silence and lost his patience. Months later, Harry met someone new in Boston while consulting on a project there. Her name was Elise, and she was a museum educator who laughed with warmth rather than calculation. Their first date involved clam chowder, a wrong subway train, and Harry accidentally sitting through half of a lecture on colonial furniture because he was too embarrassed to admit he was lost. Elise laughed until tears gathered in her eyes, but it never felt cruel. That difference stunned him. With Jane, humor had often carried a blade. With Elise, it felt like sunlight. Harry moved slowly this time, valuing steadiness over sparks and sincerity over spectacle. He also got funny after surviving hell, which surprised him. Pain had not ruined his personality. It had sharpened it. At a cookout in Charleston with Marcus and friends, Harry retold the story of the novelty hard hat photo that helped expose the fraud, and the whole patio howled. "Imagine tanking your whole scam because of a rubber chicken sticker," Marcus said. Harry nearly choked laughing. The laughter mattered. It turned memory into material, not a wound. Jane had wanted to define him by humiliation. Instead, even the ugliest part of the story now contained a note of absurdity that she could never take back. The last time Harry saw Jane was outside a mediation office in Houston. She looked immaculate at a distance and exhausted up close. For a second, he saw the woman from Pike Place Market, the one who laughed at his coffee mistake and made the world feel playful. Then the image vanished. Jane asked whether he felt proud. Harry considered the question. "No," he said calmly. "I feel accurate." That answer hit harder than shouting ever could. He walked away without anger, because anger would have tied him to her. Truth had already done the brutal work. It took her lies, her image, and her easy confidence. Harry's story spread later, not because it was sensational, but because people recognized something painfully common in it: the danger of trusting charm without checking character. He had loved deeply, ignored warning signs, and nearly lost his home, dignity, and future because he believed goodness would naturally defeat deception. It does not. Goodness needs evidence, boundaries, and courage. The moral Harry carried forward was simple. Never confuse being kind with being careless, and never let betrayal turn you into what hurt you. The strongest revenge is not cruelty. It is truth, discipline, and a life rebuilt so well that the lie becomes footnote. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.